Today I'm going to walk you through how I built my first porch swing using these plans from Woodcraft, and I'll link these down below. These plans were great. They were easy to follow, the cut list was excellent, and they even had some samples that you can cut out and use so that you can get certain boards cut with the correct angles. Now, the one downside is these plans are for a 4-foot long bench, and they specifically say not to change the size of that bench. That's just to make sure that you're making your bench strong enough. Now, I did just that and I decided to change mine. So mine is modified to 6 feet long and the seat depth is 24 inches deep. So I'll walk you through how I made mine strong enough so that it will hold the bench and more people sitting on it. So to start off, I went to Home Depot and I picked up cedar 2x4s and I cut it to length. I also labeled all of the boards so that I'd make sure to get the correct boards in the right spot. I started with the assembly of the armrests, and I found it easiest to lay it out first, just to make sure I had the correct boards in the right spots. I used the drill press for countersinks, however you could easily use a regular drill. You'll see I used a square the whole project just to make sure everything was lined up correctly. The last thing I wanted was a crooked swing. Now the plan calls for 2-inch and 3-inch screws. However, since my swing is a little larger, I used exterior 2.5-inch and 3-inch screws. I used Titebond 3 since it's waterproof and this swing was going to be outdoors. The plans recommend using cedar, mahogany, teak, or Douglas fir. So if you wanted to save some money, fir might be a better choice. I chose to go with cedar since it was going to hold up pretty well for an outdoor swing. Apparently, I can't read directions and should have cut the curve in the bottom boards before putting together the armrests. The plans have a template to cut this out. However, since my swing is larger, I had to just kind of wing it. I used the bandsaw, but a jigsaw would work just fine. To get a round edge on the armrests, I used a bolt for the template. So the plans called for 1x4 boards in the slats of the back. However, I chose to use 2x4s instead. just to give it a more uniformed look. So I used a doweling jig to drill the holes here. Now you'll actually see me using 2 doweling jigs. I dropped the one that I originally bought from Rockler, so I bought this one from Home Depot to give it a try. It also had something that was kind of cool to use where you drill the holes, then you put in these bits that have a point on them and you're supposed to drill it into the wood so that you see exactly where to drill your holes. I was not a fan. You could barely see where the marks were. I also didn't like that I had to reposition the jig every time I wanted to drill my second hole. It was frustrating and irritating to use. It also wasn't self-centering, so you can see that on the 2x4 it's off on every single one. It's not right in the center. So you actually see me go back to using my Rockler jig, and I actually just customized it so that it would work for the 2x4s. This was seriously the toughest part of the whole project, just trying to line up all those holes and get it in place and straight. So what I did off camera was things were getting a little overwhelming down there on the floor. I just could not seem to get these tight enough to really pull it together, and the glue was drying rather quickly. So I just off camera, I took this up here and brought it up to my workbench, and I took the clamps and just really clamped it down as tight as I could get it. There was still quite a bit of a gap. And this one edge started to almost come up. So what I did was I took clamps and I clamped it down, which actually helped, I believe, just making it line up better with the holes. And then I used a wood mallet and I just banged against this side. When these sides were held tight against here, I just banged against it and it sealed everything up really nice and tight. The glue is dry. The only thing I'm a little concerned about that we'll find out is there was glue going everywhere. So I'm not sure if it's going to be stuck to my workbench. So let's check it out. All right, so we're in good shape. It's not stuck to the workbench and it held tight. It's solid. The edge of the back was not quite straight, so I took it over to the miter saw to clean up. And yes, I'm the dork climbing on the shop floor because I am out of room to work in here. Getting the countersinks drilled was no picnic. Here's some behind the scene footage of just what you do in a one-woman shop. Get her done. I found the best way to keep things lined up square was to clamp the boards to the workbench while attaching. Since I was unable to use the drill press here, I created a jig with a 2x4 scrap just to make sure I was drilling straight. I used tape on my bit to get the depth correct. To make the bench stronger, I put in an extra support on the bottom. Rather than buying plugs, I used a plug cutter and cut them from scrap cedar I had. Off camera, I used wood glue and a rubber mallet to fill the holes with wood plugs. Then once it was dry, I used a flush cut saw to trim off the excess. To better line up the 1x4 seat boards, I used 1/4-inch wood strips. I notched out the first board to fit the armrest. I used brads and a nailer to attach the seat slats just to give it a cleaner look. The last board I cut to fit exactly. I drilled holes for the hanging hardware. I used wood filler on all holes and sanded. So you'll want to make sure to re-drill those hardware holes after you paint. I didn't do that in the beginning, and I accidentally chipped out some of the wood pretty badly, so you'll just want to make sure to do that. For the hardware, I used stainless steel 3/8 inch, although the plans called for 5/16 inch. I chose to use something a little bit thicker just because it would be holding more weight on the bench. To help things hold, I used Loctite. I had my client install the ceiling hooks. For the chain, I used galvanized, rated at 1,250 pounds. A little overkill, but I wanted to make sure that it would be strong enough. I will need to cut the extra chain off, but I left it for right now just to make sure that my client likes the height and doesn't want to adjust it. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future builds.